there is no paycheck, that you
Yeah.
are only paid when you produce a result. Did we just make the biggest mistake of our life? I'm not giving up. I'm not quitting. If you want to change your life, you cannot let fear drive. Your team is behaving exactly as you've trained them to.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pick Now podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Munn. Today's guest, Amy Lessinger, entrepreneur, speaker, coach, leadership strategist. Amy, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Jeff. We're going to have a great conversation.
I have really been looking forward to this because you and I have so many overlaps, and one of them is, kind of long corporate career and then leaving because you see something else, something that's possible. So let's go back to the Amy Lessinger origin story. Like walk me through those years.
Well, I straight out of college, I went into real estate. My degree's in speech pathology and ideology. And
really? And you go into real, so, okay.
I know. How the heck did that happen, right? I just think I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. And, I said to my dad, I don't know if I'm cut out for the cookie cutter mold of I have a job, I go there every single day, I do the same thing. And he said, probably not. Our family is built from entrepreneurs. And so he said, why don't you try real estate? I decided that I would give it the 2 to 3 years that I would go and pursue my master's degree, fell in love with it. Went on to build a very successful team. Then we built a group of brokerages that we built from nothing, a startup, through the Great Recession into, and by the time we sold, we were producing just under $1 billion. And that was quite the ride. And when I made the decision to sell the brokerage, RE/MAX headquarters came calling and said, would you consider coming to this side? At first I said, no. I never saw that.
And this side, help me understand how RE/MAX is set up. So this side being, are you kind of running, and this might be the wrong term, but like RE/MAX franchises, and then there's broker, corporate with leader. Okay.
Yeah, you're a franchisee. And then, they said, would you come to the headquarters side and, join our leadership team and help us grow? And I loved that ride. It was incredible. I ultimately, was over the West region, then was promoted to be over the US, and then was promoted to be president of RE/MAX Worldwide. And so it was just quite a trajectory, quite a career. And it gave me such incredible perspective on what I think entrepreneurs could learn from corporate America, what corporate America could learn from entrepreneurs, because they're not the same thing, but both have deep benefits, and both have areas where they lose their way and they could stand to gain knowledge from the other.
So I'm fascinated with speech pathology major. What's that thread? Where does that come from, Amy?
I've always been interested in the medical world. So, in speech pathology, in the college that I went to, you graduate from the School of Medicine. So ultimately you can go on to do anything that you want to. I would have had to take one class, statistics, if I wanted to go on to med school. And frankly, it's something that I've always been interested in, but honest to God, Jeff, I think it stops a lot of people 7 more years on top of what you've been doing. I wanted to get out of school and I wanted to go on and, pursue life. And so, I had lots of opportunity and lots of, things that I could have done with my degree, but life took me another direction. I really found something that I loved.
When did the real estate thing kind of pop up? Because I've had that experience too, where, I came up as a law firm lawyer. I went to law school because I didn't want to go out into the real world. I wanted to avoid getting a real job as long as possible. But then there came a point where it's like, I'm not sure I actually like this. Was it more like I'm not sure speech pathology, medicine, whatever is the track for me? Or was there just something about real estate that you're like, I'm curious?
Both. So
Okay.
in speech pathology, I'm a very goal-oriented, driven individual. And I
I can relate.
found that it was highly analytical
Uh-huh.
and it took a lot of time to make progress with certain types of patients. And it
Mm.
required patience, of which,
Hmm.
as a young 20 something, I didn't have a lot of. I really wanted
Hmm.
to drive results, and you're on their timeline. You can't force results at that point. And so I knew that it maybe that aspect of, or that world maybe wasn't going to move as fast as maybe I wanted
Hmm.
to. And then, my dad was a developer, so I always had an interest in real estate. I would borrow his MLS
Okay.
books. So yes, I'm that old that literally the books would come to the house. They were black and white, and it looked like a phone book, and all the new listings were in it. And I was always kind of looking through, and always had a fascination with real estate.
That's really fascinating. Like
Yeah.
you were kind of surrounded by it. So it's like, hey, my dad has this book. What's in this book? Right.
Yeah. And my mom was a
Yeah.
hospital administrator. So, I
Uh-huh.
had both the medical world around
You're,
me and I had the real estate world around me,
oh, interesting. Yeah.
so I was exposed on both sides.
Uh-huh. So dad won.
Dad won. Even though he was retired by the time I got into the business. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So what were your early days as a real estate agent like?
driven, hungry. It's quite something to step out of college and go
Hmm.
into a job where there is no paycheck, that you are
Yeah.
only paid when you produce a result. And that was scary,
Hmm.
but also really exciting to me, because nobody was responsible for the promotion that maybe I wouldn't get, the
Hmm.
income ceiling that would be imposed upon me. I knew that if I wanted to succeed, that it was going to be up to me, and I loved that idea. One of the real estate instructors said to me, "If you work 40 hours a week in this business, earnestly work 40 hours a week in this business, you will be highly successful and you will earn more money than you thought possible." And I just really
Wow.
took that to heart. I was a worker bee anyway. And,
Uh-huh.
in terms of real estate, and like attorneys and so many in professional roles, you work more than 40 hours a week by far. But at the end of the day, I was exhilarated by it and I was challenged by it. I love to solve complicated problems. And at that time, when I started in the business, I had done a couple of short sales. The market was, definitely a buyer's market, and the
Hmm.
sales cycle was long. And so I gained a lot of skill early on that would serve me well during the Great Recession, because I wasn't so panicked thinking I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
So many agents at that time got caught, and
Hmm.
we capitalized on that, but that's another conversation for another time.
Or we can dive into
Or we
that
can
at
do
some
it
point
now.
here. We'll
I
see
was
where
like,
it
I
goes.
switched gears. I
What,
fast
what,
forwarded a long time into the Great
yeah.
Recession.
Well, yeah. And in those early times, I mean, I think about most of the successful real estate agents I know and have come across are not 25 years old.
Right.
So how did you overcome? Like, I would think a lot of people would walk into a room and say, "Who's this kid?"
For
Like, how did
sure.
you overcome that?
For sure. The average age of an agent then, I believe, was about 60. I
Wow.
remember walking into the office. There was not a single computer on any desk. I
Uh,
had been working as a student employee for the computing center at the university. So we had email, video conferencing, we had all these things. And I walked in
yeah.
and I went, "Where am I? And how does this work?" And I really loved it, because the more experienced agents were quite curious about how, this was their second and third career for many of them. And I was starting
Hmm.
out. So
Hmm.
many of them took me under their wing. They wanted to
Mm.
show the kid the ropes. And I
Hmm.
will forever be grateful because they did that for me. And conversely, I helped them, come up to speed. I will never forget this, Jeff. I was kind of one of the first people to put a picture on a flyer. And this is comical. You know how I did it? I took an actual picture. I took the film. It was developed. I
Uh-huh.
literally taped it onto a flyer that I made and I stuck it on the copier. And
Yeah.
everybody
Wow.
said, how did you do that? We want to get pictures on ours. And so I would tell them how I did. This was before digital. And yes, I'm that
High
old.
technology.
It
Yeah.
was before, but we leveraged the technology we had to elevate. And pretty soon everybody was doing it. And then finally digital came into play and we didn't have to do that anymore. Thank goodness. But,
Right.
it was just incredible how many people helped me. And then the other thing that I did was I made sure that I focused in populations where my age wouldn't be such a question, first time home buyer
Right.
populations.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we had bought in a first time home buyer neighborhood. I did what's called farming. I did geographical farming in that neighborhood where I wanted to become the expert of the neighborhood that I
Hmm.
lived in.
Hmm.
And so I made lots of relationships. I ended up selling, I can't remember, it was like 50 houses in that neighborhood over a period of time.
Wow.
And, and then, 2 and 3 years later, those same clients would sell and move up because now they either had expanded their family or they were ready for a bigger home. And so I would have the opportunity to sell it, but also help them buy the next house. So I just started where I was and tried to appeal to a population that could relate to me. I could relate to them. And it just grew from there. It was great.
How much of that was instinctual and planned versus you just kind of fell into it?
I think it was definitely instinctual over
Uh-huh.
planned. I mean, I guess it's both. I really wanted to make sure that I wasn't answering the how old are you question every
Right.
single day until I gained
Instead
a
of like, hey, I'm just like you. I just bought a house here too. Right. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just kind of naturally gravitated toward where can I gain traction without being
Did you
questioned.
did you did you get at that age, were you thinking long term enough to like, hey, these folks are going to buy a next house and they're going to reach to me first? Because
Yes.
I think that takes some long term planning and vision that maybe not a lot of folks have at that age. I certainly didn't.
Yes. It for sure was deliberate on my part. However, I didn't know when I started that they would turn over much faster. The average person keeps their
Yeah.
home, for 7 years, but a first time home buyer usually keeps it for 3. So that strategy on my part ended up being in my favor. I knew you have to make it, 3 years in the business to start getting that repeat business. And I
Hmm.
knew. But I
Hmm.
didn't realize that by starting with first time home buyers that they would turn over faster. And some of my older colleagues shared that with me and I said, "Oh, thank goodness I'm in the right spot because I can make it. I can do
Right.
this." And then it'll
Right.
start to snowball a little bit later.
And were people turning things over more quickly just because the market was so frothy when you got in it?
Well, they buy the first time home and back then
Mm.
you just wanted to squeeze into home ownership.
Yeah.
And you would buy a house that probably wasn't going to work for longer term growth in terms of family growth, job or economic growth. People were just
Right.
sort of in these entry level homes and they were ready for that next step up much sooner because they
Yeah.
were
Well,
they
and
were
they
kind of,
had kids and the interest rates were low and
yep,
things were appreciating and it's like,
yes,
oh,
yeah,
2 years in, I'm ready to sell.
yep.
Yeah. Awesome. So what happens at the Great Recession?
Well, always wanted to be a broker, and that is
Uh-huh.
where you're leading agents, and really wanted to do that. I went on to built a team, because eventually I was selling more than I could handle myself, and so added to that.
How quickly did that happen, Amy? So you said you started in '05. Is that what you said?
No, started in real estate in 1995. So,
Oh, okay. Okay. I don't know where
yes,
I had
yes. So
'05 in my
10
head.
years
Okay.
later,
Okay. So there is
bought the,
quite a bit of run
yeah,
up there. Yeah.
yeah. So 10 years later, bought the brokerage. And,
Uh-huh.
it was a startup. There were
Hmm.
three of us. And
Uh-huh.
we said, this is a move we really want to make. The market was hot and going
Yeah.
strong. And just about the time we signed a $24,000 a month lease payment is about the time the market started to crash.
Yeah.
So here you find yourself, life throws you curveballs that maybe you didn't expect. And I had a decision to make. I mean, everybody around us was crashing. These were
Hmm.
people that I respected, longtime brokerages that had been in the business a long time that were shuttering their doors. And I remember laying awake at night thinking, how are we going to do this? Did we just make the biggest mistake of our lives? And now everything we've worked for is going to go out the window. And I just made a decision right then and there. I said, I'm not giving up. I'm not quitting. If I can teach, my agents how to succeed no matter what the market throws at them, they will
Hmm.
win. And as a result, we will win. And
Hmm.
so I just, I've always had a real passion for human performance, human development, the psychology of achievement. And I really wanted to understand, or I want to understand always, what makes people tick, why they're wired the way they're wired. And I decided that there was lots of opportunity to go after agents who historically had been very, very successful, but found themselves caught in the market
Hmm.
without the skill set. Many of them had never seen a buyer's market.
Hmm.
They had never seen a falling market. They'd never seen short sales or REO properties. And a lot of competitors at that time said, well, we will not be doing short sales.
Mm.
I thought, well, if you like food with your meals, yes, you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we just got really, really focused on making sure we were equipping our agents to succeed no matter what was thrown at them and get really, really good at very technical transactions, very difficult transactions. Wanted them to understand everything there could possibly be to understand about, lending options out there, because so much of the funding dried up. But
Hmm.
if you knew about every kind of program, sometimes you could leverage it to either create a deal or save a deal. And
Hmm.
so, once we started doing that one by one by one, we started attracting agents who said, I need help. I need to understand how I can succeed in this market. And we just got really, really focused on getting really, really good at, navigating the complexities of the market and navigating the complexities of handling clientele where their world was falling apart. And, towards the end there, when we ultimately sold the brokerage, we were ranked, I think, 42nd in the nation across all brands for per agent productivity, meaning our agents were producing far more than the norm.
Wow.
And it was just where I was passionate about it. I just wanted us to be the damn best. I wanted us to
Uh-huh.
do, just excellent work. We were not the most inexpensive place. We were the place where you came when you were serious about being excellent in the business. You came to us and you worked with us. And I was just really proud of that. It was just something that I was really fueled and passionate about.
Where do you think that drive comes from, Amy?
I have always been driven. I don't know, you might have to ask my parents.
Uh-huh.
I have always been just really, really driven. Um, I don't really know where it comes from. I just know that I really care deeply about the people that I work with.
Hmm.
I believe that people are far more capable than they give themselves credit for.
Mm.
I believe that many of us, when we are supported and we are able to tap into depths in ourselves that we never thought possible, that is truly where transformation happens. And
Yeah.
I'm just so passionate about it. I mean, the people that I work with often are stuck. They're, you know this one, Jeff. They are stuck and they are being held hostage by their brain and by what they think the problem they're grappling with. But more often than not, what they think the problem is isn't the real problem itself. I think you probably find that
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. Only 100% of the time. Um,
Yeah.
so what I see in you, Amy, is I see these two things that I don't often see together. And one is drive. And drive is, relatively rare, not that rare, not unheard of. But a lot of times drive shows up as individual achievement in someone.
Sure.
I want to stand out. I want to
Right.
prove myself. I had a client tell me literally a couple days ago, and we spent a great deal of time exploring the statement. Like, I want to prove myself to all the doubters. And
Mm.
so there's this individual drive, but you also seem to have it paired with a desire to teach others and help others succeed. And I think that is a relatively rare combination.
Well, thank you for
And I'm
that, Jeff.
wondering,
I would say this. I would say, I think that's come with time. I think that 20 something agent
mhm,
had a lot to prove. I think she
yeah,
really wanted to succeed and she wanted individual success and she got it and found it.
mhm,
But also, I think that I um, always wanted to wear that broker hat. And the broker hat isn't just about, well, I get a piece of what everybody is doing underneath me. It's so much more than that. You have the opportunity to shape people's lives and their careers. And that
yeah,
spoke to me. So I think that was the time that it started pushing beyond me, where I said, it's not about me anymore. I, I felt that sense of individual achievement. I knew I was, good at the business, but I wanted to create greatness in other people.
right. And build something
Yeah.
bigger than yourself,
Yeah. Beyond
right?
yourself.
But that root, I mean, you didn't, you weren't successful as a 25-year-old broker by elbowing other people out of the way. You were helping other people figure out how to do flyers and figure out how to do technology and do all these things. So, you know, maybe it wasn't exactly the same as what it grew into, but it seems like the roots of that were there pretty far back.
Yeah, for sure. That's interesting
Yeah.
insight.
Um, So as you come forward, and I think I had '05 in mind as the it was the year you bought the brokerage, right? And so you grow the brokerage, and it's like $1 billion. Is that what you said? $1 billion in
Yeah,
sales at some?
we were selling, just under $1 billion in annual
Wow.
sales in a market that had fallen by half. So, but it took us, 10 years to get there. I mean,
Yeah.
it was one by one in terms of building. And, that it was
You
just
had to be willing to play a
hard
long
work.
game.
Half of those
Yeah.
years were very difficult, um, painful years. When you're the leader, and you're
Hmm.
leading a group of people where everything around you and around them is collapsing.
Hmm. Yeah.
That is a world that is enormously challenging for a leader. And I think it's really where so much of my leadership philosophy of today was forged. I would come home some nights, and I don't mind admitting it, I would just sob because I had absorbed all of the energy of everyone around me while still having to be steadfast and
Hmm.
help steer the ship, despite the fact that, the waves were crashing over the bow and we might be off track and everything else. And I knew that if I wanted to grow the company, that I was going to have to grow myself as a leader and as a human being, because I needed to increase my capacity to hold all of that for other people while being okay inside of myself, if that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just, growth. And so I hired my own coach and
Mm.
have been coached for a very, very long time. It is an investment that I have believed has
Same
changed.
coach or different coaches over the years?
I actually have worked with the same coach for a very long time. I had a
Wow.
variety of different coaches prior to this coach,
Uh-huh.
but I hired her for a different reason. The reason I just explained. I needed to grow myself. I
Yeah.
didn't want you to coach me on real estate. I didn't need you to hold me accountable. I didn't need
Right.
you to talk to me about my fitness. Like all those things, right? It
Yeah.
was so much more on a soul and human growth level, and depth level that, I found her through a mutual friend who, is also a very highly successful coach, but said, I can't coach you. You're my friend. And
Uh-huh.
so, she came to me, and I still coach with her today. Her name's Amy Kovarik. She's phenomenal.
What was her name?
Amy Kovarik. Amy
Okay.
K Coaching. Her last name is actually Musson, but when I met her, it was Kovarik. So it's Amy K Coaching. She's
Uh-huh.
awesome.
Uh-huh. And how many years have you worked with her?
Oh my gosh, a long time. It's got to be 20 years now.
Wow.
hmm
That's
And I'm not
fantastic.
one where if your work is complete, your work is complete.
Yeah.
But we over the years we have just, worked so well together in terms of continuing that path of my own growth and development.
So, for people who are watching this and haven't necessarily had a coach or been coached in the way that you're talking about, because a lot of coaching is,
For sure.
performance coaching, productivity coaching, accountability coaching, skill coaching, and you're talking about something very different. And I suspect that when you're coaching someone today, that's the way you work, that's the way I work. What was the thing, if you can remember, what was the aha that you had with Amy? It was like, oh, I have to work with her.
The first thing, that it was an exercise, about your gremlins.
Mm,
And it was like, because there's so much fear in the market and so much fear everywhere. I mean, you watch the news and you thought, oh my goodness, it's
yeah.
just worse every day. The stock market continued to fall. It was like, are we ever going to get out of this hole that we built? And so, she had me put my gremlins on my shoulder, and
Uh-huh.
it's like, what's it saying to you? What's it
hmm
literally talking to you about? And so I really remember that exercise and thinking about, your gremlin sits there and says, you can't do this. Why do you think you can do this?
Mm,
Nobody can do this. These are impossible conditions, and you're not good enough to do this. You don't have the skill set to do this. I mean, all the things that your gremlins say to you
yeah.
that they're not true, but
hmm
fundamentally I now know this is your brain trying to keep you safe. This is a
Absolutely.
brain response, and it is
Yeah.
natural and normal, and it happens to everyone. It still happens to me.
hmm
It's biological. However, are you going to let fear drive every decision and
Right.
every action that you take? If you're going to do that, you're going to miss out on the best part. And the best part
Yeah.
is a life of pursuit, a life of, growth, a life that is full of freedom because you're not jailed by your thoughts. You're able to
hmm
acknowledge, yes, I'm scared right now. Yes, I have fears, but what's that fear trying to tell me? And then what do I want to say to the fear? I mean, it's like, if you want to change your life, you cannot let fear drive. You just absolutely can't.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit of a, for me, it's a little bit of a both and. Like
Mhm.
there's the fear that's like the rationalization and the safety and the other things. And then sometimes there's a fear that's like, wow, could I really do that? It's almost the
Oh,
fear that calls
it's a
you
self-doubt.
forward.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's like
Sure.
this, oh, yeah, like it kind of makes you want to run into the fire rather than, run away from it.
Sure.
Um, what was a moment as you're building this business where you almost let fear get the best of you, and how did you overcome that?
Oh, I had so many of them. Every single time
Yeah.
I wrote the check for $24,000 on our lease payment, I just thought,
Yeah.
I mean, how are we going to do this?
Hmm.
And and so yeah, I mean, I had a ton of those fears, and you know, overcoming it was you have a growth plan, you
Hmm.
understand what you need to do in order to grow, focus on what you can control, which is your actions and your thoughts, and make sure that each day that you show up and to the best of your ability, you make as much impact for other people as you possibly can. I just really always felt that if I was able to do that, that I would win and there would be reward.
Hmm.
Did we win every day? No, we didn't win
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
But if you can win most days, a lot of days, that's how you overcome it. And overcoming it is time and discipline. You know, I had to submit to, I tend to want to be much more of a free spirit and a bit more of creative. And early on, I learned that systems set you free, discipline sets you free. And
Mm.
so I can have all the freedom that I have now, economic
Hmm.
freedom, freedom within my mind, freedom to do the things that I want to do. Um, because I have submitted to a disciplined life. And I think
Mm.
that that's another thing in terms of your ability to navigate conflict, challenges, fear. There's a discipline that goes with it. And it doesn't mean that, look, Jeff, I'm just like everybody else. It doesn't mean that I have this all perfectly figured out every single day and I don't have a bad day. Of course I do.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, having the discipline to and the structures and the systems to carry through despite the bad day is a skill I've had to develop over time.
Yeah. Um, Walk us through like one of your first realizations in terms of, whether it's self-discipline or some kind of structure or some kind of routine. It's like, oh, I don't, this isn't necessarily the first thing I would pick every morning, but when I do this, good things happen.
Working out.
Yeah.
Working out. I mean, Oprah has said this many times where she said, I have never been to a workout that I just didn't, she's like, I hate every single one. Now,
Uh-huh.
I can't quite be that extreme because,
Yeah.
I just did yoga this morning, went to my class, loved it. So I can't say that I hate every single one, but the discipline of making sure you stay healthy and strong.
Hmm.
Those are
Yeah.
my two with, I don't battle with the scale anymore.
Hmm.
I don't argue with those numbers. I've been the same dang size for a very long time, but it's
Yeah.
because I have some tools and systems that I use that sometimes I freaking don't like it and I don't want to do it. And
Yeah.
sometimes I just say, nope, I'm having the pizza and I'm having the ice cream. I don't care because those are part of life and I want to be happy in my life.
Cheat day, right? Yeah.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. And so,
yeah.
and I just don't duke it out with the extra 5 pounds or 8 pounds or whatever. I just don't. I want to be happy
Yeah.
too. There's a
Yeah.
balance. And what is that arbitrary number that you're chasing anyway? I want to be fit, healthy, and strong. That's
Hmm.
that's my criteria. It's not I want to weigh this much. I want to fit in
I
that.
find it's more about like how I want to feel because of
Yeah,
those things than it is about the things themselves,
that's
right?
right. And I
Yeah.
think once I learned that, I was
Hmm.
able to, that's just a good example, like you asked, of a discipline that has served me for my entire life, but I had to learn it.
Hmm. Hmm. And then what about creating those structures for um, an organization, like
Hmm.
for your people? Like one of the things that I think is so impressive about your story, and you hear this as something you should do. You don't see that many people who are able to execute on it. Is when you are in a down market, when you're in a tough time, you're actually staffing up and planning for the turnaround, not for where you are. And it seems to me like you did that very well. How did you do that?
Thank you. You know, again, I think there's that driver in me. But I also am I have, as I said, my leadership philosophy was formed in the Great Recession years, where so much in the corporate world, and I work with a lot of corporations, founders, CEOs, and so much of that structure relies on hierarchy in terms of their leadership. So
Yeah.
you're my boss. So, and I'm your boss. And because I'm your boss, you have to do what I say.
Right.
In my world, where I learned to lead, every single agent that I led was an independent contractor, and every single one chose to either walk in the door every day or they could choose to walk out the door every day. When you have to lead in that environment, you cannot fall back on the crutch of do it because I said so. That's not leadership that's directive.
Yeah.
So I carried my leadership philosophy into the corporate world about, I believe that leadership is all about building and elevating others. Your measure of being a great leader is how many great leaders would choose to follow you anywhere, no matter what the circumstances or the title. And you see this in organizations. You see brilliant leaders that maybe don't have the highest title, but they are phenomenal at what they do, and people will follow them into the fire anywhere, regardless of what their title is. And so I really brought that philosophy forward. And what I've seen in so many of the organizations that I work with is the leadership operating system is managers who were very, very good at managing people are promoted. Yet where a lot of organizations get it wrong is, how are you developing your leadership operating system? It's not just we promote you and now you have a direct report. But what is our way of leadership? What is our philosophy about leadership? Like Procter & Gamble, for example, they have an incredible leadership program in terms of leaders get reassigned all the time. They have to go to different divisions of the company. They have to work in different levels of the company. They trade all the time because they want well-rounded leaders that have been in a variety of situations and where they can kind of lead anywhere, no matter what department, what role, and there isn't this stagnation. And it's an interesting philosophy, but also they spend a lot of time and energy and money developing leadership principles instead of managerial principles. The higher up you go, when you try to apply managerial ideology, managerial principles, the less effective it is. Because when you are at the highest levels of leadership, you are leading other leaders. And so what are you doing to develop those leaders to be an even better leader than you? You know, it's sort of that
How do you distinguish leading versus managing?
Managing is setting directives, setting standards, managing process, managing outcome, people. Leadership is you are designing the vision, and yes, the systems and the execution strategy, as opposed to the essence of the doing. And that's where you get into people who, I mean, I can't tell you how many interviews I have sat in with candidates and they say, I don't like to be micromanaged.
Yeah.
These are high caliber leaders, and they say, I
Yeah.
don't like to be micromanaged. When you say, what do you not like? I don't like to be
Yeah.
micromanaged. And that tells me they have come from a world where the leadership operating system is we promote. And as you grow, you're promoted, but we haven't invested in installing leadership skill. They're
Yeah.
great managers.
We
And
promote managers, but they remain managers.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
They haven't been taught. And it's
Right.
okay. We need great
Right.
managers. Believe me. I mean,
Yeah.
I am not faulting managerial skill. Believe me, it is valued and it is important. However, the higher you go, the more obsolete that skill set becomes in what you're being asked to do. You have to change, you have to transition from
Right.
managing to leading.
Right. I mean, one of the things that I work with my clients a lot on is, I'm working with people running smaller companies, and oftentimes they are the person who has kind of done it all, and they get to a level where that's not sustainable anymore. And it's really hard for them to let go of that
Oh, yes.
and to let other people, like one of the things we talk about, a lot of them ultimately want to sell their companies.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll look at them and I'll say, to maximize the value of your company, you have to be completely unnecessary to it.
100%.
And they agree with that intellectually and resist it like anything.
Oh, yes. And I know this one
They
very well.
so want to be wanted. They so want to be needed. They so want to be there for their people. And I was just talking with one of my clients about, when he used to go on vacation before we started working together, he was like, yeah, I'm going to be on vacation, but you know where I am and you can reach out anytime. And now he sees how that's actually been limiting not only him, but the whole organization. Like
Sure.
they're not learning and growing.
That's right. Yeah. And I work with a lot of leaders as well. And, I love to say this. Your team is behaving exactly as you've trained them to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So if they're escalating everything to you, you taught them
Yeah.
to escalate everything to you. You taught them
Yeah.
that it has to go through you in order for it to count or be validated or move forward or, whatever it is. But here's the trouble with that. You become your own ceiling and you become your own bottleneck when that is
Absolutely.
the operating system. But I know this one so well because, I really struggled with selling the brokerage for a number of years. I was very, very stuck. And, truth be told, even though I had done all of that soul work, I really didn't know who I was without it. I didn't know what I was going to do next. And I think
was that the thing that got in the way? It was like it was because you didn't see what was on the other side of it?
Uh-huh. Yes.
Okay.
And I don't think I had enough trust to know that it would work out. And now, I teach this principle. I call it an irreversible step where you don't need to make another decision. Or a better decision. You need to make the decision you can't take back. Not because you can't unwind things. It's because when we have one foot in and one foot out, that's not commitment. What do you really want? And I knew that I wanted something else. I knew that I wanted something more.
But you didn't know what that was when you sold?
I didn't know how to get there.
Uh-huh.
And so I stayed in the business for too long.
Uh-huh.
And
how define too long? Like how long were you in this? 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you said? Yeah.
3 years.
Yeah. I was in a similar place when I was, I'd been thinking about going out on my own as a coach for a long time, and I kept waiting for the perfect circumstances and saying, I was at a big company and they're giving you new vested long-term incentives every year. And there's always like you think, oh, well, I get to this point and then I'll leave. And then you get a little more, or like another event shows up or whatever. And I was on the 5-year, I was on the 2 more years plan for like 5 years.
Right. And it happens. It happens to people.
And I ultimately, I had to get laid off in order to actually pursue this thing on my own.
Forced.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. The
Yet,
universe forced my hand.
yeah, for
Definitely.
sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, you know, I work with a lot of people in that realm, and it's particularly founders, you know, where you just captured it, where they have been the heartbeat of the business
Yeah.
and they want to sell it, and they know that it's time for them to sell it, but they don't know who they are without it. They don't know what they'll do without it. And
Hmm.
that's an area where I feel very, very passionate about. One of the big things that, you know, I've worked on in my life is making sure that I have passions outside of what I do, so that I'm
Hmm.
really clear on who I am aside from what I do, because what I do is
Hmm.
not who I am. I bring who I am to what I do, but it doesn't
Yeah.
define me. And I
Right.
think I have had so many say, I don't even know what I would do if I had time off. That the
Yeah.
idea of that stillness, the idea of that silence scares the hell out of them, because they've not stopped in decades sometimes to actually say, what do I want and who could I be without this?
I think those, so I definitely see that.
Mm-hmm.
I think those people have a huge advantage actually, because at least they
Oh,
get the problem. Where
yes.
I also run into people is people who they built themselves into this place where they're exhausted and something needs to change, and they think that selling the business will fix everything, and they
Mm-hmm.
haven't even contemplated
Mm-hmm.
that. I had I gave a talk to a group of founders and who had sold, and one of them called it a valley of despair.
Mm-hmm.
Like the day after the sale, it was like, oh, I kind of heard people talking about that, but I had no idea that that would be me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So did you, like, you did sell? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there were a couple kind of major events. One was you deciding to sell the brokerage,
Mm-hmm.
not knowing what was on the other side of it. You did it anyway. What was that period? And I don't know how long that period of time was between things. What was that like for you?
I think it was not a long time
Hmm.
between. And I think
Yeah.
part of it was, you know, whatever you believe, universe, God, you know,
Yeah.
um, whatever you believe. I believe this, that that next path was unable to even come forward energetically because there was no
Right.
space for it before. And so
Yeah.
only when I put my signature on that contract, and it was like a clearing of like, the path is wide open. And
Hmm.
I had a multitude of opportunities. So I didn't just have the one that came to me. I had a multitude of opportunities, which was really interesting because, you know, the public declaration, you know, had not really happened.
Uh-huh.
And so, but it was just almost like energetically things could come through. And it was like,
Mm.
oh, what about this and maybe this. And, you know, a couple of things I was like, no, definitely not the right fit. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think once you clear a path, now you can see more clearly. And I think
Yeah.
that was my experience.
And what kind of, so it's like you've energetically declared yourself available.
Hmm.
And so what kind of things were showing up for you, and how did you ultimately decide to do, so you sell the brokerage in what year?
I was clear in terms of, I knew that I wanted a bigger platform. And when I say that now, everybody thinks social media stuff. That wasn't what that meant back then. What it meant
Hmm.
was I wanted more people to help. And
Uh-huh.
I wanted to do it at a bigger scale, was what that
Uh-huh.
meant for me. And so a couple of the things that came forward, they didn't really meet that criteria.
Hmm.
And then obviously the opportunity with Remax was an enormous scale. You know,
Mm.
140,000 agents across 110 countries. You know, that's a big, big scale. And when I was over the West region, which was where I started, you know,
Uh-huh.
I was responsible for about 43,000 agents and
Wow.
14
And how
states.
many, when you were, because you were essentially a Remax franchisee, is that,
Mhm.
how many agents did you have when you were doing that
We
you
had about
ultimately,
135 and we had 3 offices.
wow. And
Yeah.
so you sell that and move
Yep.
into a role where it's
Yep.
43,000.
Yep. And a big team.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
long did that take to show up?
Not long, just a couple of months. Yeah. It
Okay.
was not very
Wow.
long. I know the stars aligned for sure. Because like I
Yeah.
said, I had not made any kind of, public declaration at that point. I was
Uh-huh.
just open.
And then what's the process and the timeline there? Because you go through a few different promotions there, really in a more maybe a more traditional corporate environment in a way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, yes, and I I just always wanted to bring value and impact
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
to what I do. And so, I wanted to be impactful to those that I was leading. I wanted to be impactful to the bottom line and the business. I wanted to
Hmm.
be impactful to the network. And so in each role, I found ways to do that. And,
Hmm.
we would launch initiatives and we would do, all kinds of things to move the needle, but really not. I sometimes believe that, well, I do often, less is more. Didn't feel like
Mm.
we needed more stuff. I felt like we needed to go deeper, and
Uh-huh.
so though that's where I chose to focus. And we had such an incredible team, and we worked really,
Mm.
really well together. And it was just a really amazing journey. And then once again, that nagging voice comes at you saying, this chapter is complete and it's time for you to
Wow.
build something new again. And so I made
How
that choice.
yeah, because you're in the top job when this happens, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What?
And
T-
that's an interesting thing, Jeff. People ask me that a lot. And those people who know me really well, the title is amazing, right? I mean,
mhm.
that's a pinnacle, of a career in many people's eyes. However, I had done so much work on myself with myself that I knew better than I'm not defined by the title.
Mhm.
I didn't do it for the title.
Yeah.
I was in the network for 30 years and I had, deep, deep roots. And so it just wasn't about the title for me. It was about the impact. It was about leadership. It was about, um, you know, making my mark and contributing and having impact. And, you know, it was not an easy decision, believe me, but it was
What?
time for me to build something new, which is what I'm doing now. And I'm having
Yeah.
so much fun doing it.
I want to talk about that, but can you identify a moment where you knew, oh, this isn't, I know this looks good on paper, but this isn't it.
I think that's an internal voice. I think that's
Hmm.
something that comes to you instead of just
Yeah.
a moment. It
Yeah.
wasn't like some, big moment. It just is something that comes to you over time. You're saying, okay, this chapter's
Just like an
complete.
inner knowing kind of.
Yeah, this chapter's
Yeah.
complete. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you
And
know what you wanted to build when you left?
no,
Mm.
no, I just knew that, my, my drive in life is to, impact others. And
Hmm.
so, with the work that I do now, I'm having so much fun being able to really go deep into my work with CEOs and founders, and high level, high performers
Yeah.
to really help them tackle the root problem. What I find so often is people think they know what problem they're solving.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go a couple of layers deeper, you can find one or two problems that if they solve just those, that the majority of all the other problems that they're experiencing would go away. And so
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I have a founder who came to me and said, the sales team isn't performing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, that may be. All right. So through, a variety of conversations and a deeper dive, they have some problems with the customer experience, the model, and some challenges there that is affecting sales performance. So
Mm-hmm.
if you just take the problem at face value and you go to work on the sales team, but
Yeah.
you really have these other issues over there, the challenge then, you're solving the wrong problem.
Right.
And so I really enjoy working with organizations and leaders that want to tackle those things, that literally say, I know there's a problem and I want to get at it and I want to solve it. But maybe they're having a difficulty seeing it. Maybe they're seeing it only from one perspective. And a fresh lens will always garner some different results. And asking the hard questions. A lot of times I'll get in the room, you said it yourself, with founders and CEOs, their teams don't always tell them the truth. It's not
Oh, yeah.
because their teams are doing the wrong thing. It's because they believe that the founder or the CEO has the best answers.
Mm-hmm.
And is it safe for them to share a different perspective? Not always the case. And so if you strip some of that away and that stuff can
Yeah.
start to come out, that's where real transformation begins.
I was working with a client a few years ago who was the first non-founder CEO. He had been hired into the role by the
Mhm.
founder. And as he was leading his team, he found that their fear of the founder was getting in the way with them providing him with feedback. So he had to spend a lot of time
Yeah,
convincing them that it was safe to tell him the truth.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you see that in rooms all the time where you
Yeah.
ask that zinger question, and here's how I can tell. You ask
Yeah.
the zinger question, and the eyes go right over to the CEO or founder
Oh, yeah.
before
Yeah.
they ever answer. And
Yeah.
it's like, it is so, it's just real. Like now you won't be able to unsee it. When you see it again, you won't be able to unsee it. You'll be in one of those rooms and somebody will ask a zinger question, maybe the CEO or the founder themselves, and everybody will look back at that person.
Yeah.
Or maybe their
Yeah.
number two person, which often the number two will do the same thing. They aren't very good at challenging and pushing the status quo. Um, that's how they've become the right and left hand, valuable, amazing, integral people with a lot of knowledge. However, they aren't always the best truth tellers in the organization. It's like I said, not because they're bad
Right.
at all and
Absolutely.
ill intentioned. It's just what the organization, how it's what happens the higher you go.
Well, I think one of the things that people don't get, including the leader, frankly, is that at the level of leadership, at the level of running a company,
Mhm.
your job is to answer questions that don't have clear answers. Your
Yes,
job is to predict the future, and no one can. Your job is to decide on the strategy and take your best shot and adjust. And I think people are really inclined to believe that someone else knows the answer.
absolutely.
And they'll just look at that leader thinking, well, Joe knows, Mary knows, but they don't know either.
Mhm.
And I think when
Absolutely.
the leader can instill that in their team and say, hey, this is something we're exploring together,
Mhm.
and you have information that is just as valuable as the information that I have. You have a perspective that is just as valuable as the perspective that I have.
Mm-hmm.
You can create much better solutions, guesses, if you will, about where the world is going as a team than any one individual ever could do.
Mm-hmm. So two things come up for me there, Jeff. And the first one is in a lot of my one-on-one meetings, I would say to my team, what question should I have asked you that I didn't?
Yeah.
It gives them an
Yeah.
opportunity to say, well, you didn't ask me about this risk or this challenge or this problem that you haven't even seen yet, right?
Yeah.
And then in a group meeting, something people can do, founders, leaders can do is to say, what would happen if we looked at this completely differently?
Right.
If we looked at this completely differently, how would you see it? Like right there, that opens the door for somebody to say, well, have we thought about
Yeah.
this or have we thought about that? Because when we shut off those types of conversations, what's possible conversations, it dulls the room and people's
Right.
spark of brilliance does not get to come through. It's because everybody's looking for safety. Everybody's making sure that they don't rock the boat and they don't say the wrong thing because the culture has trained them to not say the wrong thing.
That's how I keep my job.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Yeah.
That's right.
So, Amy, as we bring this to a close, if someone's listening to this and watching this and thinking, I want to learn more about Amy, how do they keep track of what you're up to? How do they reach out to you? What are the best ways to do that?
Well, thanks for having me, Jeff. This has been such a cool conversation. I think we could have gone on for hours.
I think we could have got another hour easy. Yeah,
right. They can find me on amylessinger.com or I'm on all the social channels, same name. I'm out there everywhere. So thank you for having me again, Jeff. It was really fun.
Yeah. I have one last question. Okay. So same thing. How would someone know, oh, I have this issue and I think Amy can help me with it?
I think if you've been trying to solve the same problem for a really long time and nothing is moving, that's the biggest indicator. Yeah. That's the biggest indicator that there is the problem under the problem that you haven't gotten to yet. And I can help with that.
Awesome. Amy, thanks so much for the conversation. Thank you, listeners and viewers, for taking the time to take in this great conversation. Please follow the podcast for more of these conversations, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care.